Good evening, students. Let's get started. So the agenda for today's session is understanding the Union Budget 2024-25. And my name is Girish Khare. I'm the Head of Academic Development for Mathematics at IMS. So whatever SIMCATs that you see, I am responsible for two sections, that is QA and DILR sections out of that. So let's get started. So this is the overall agenda for today's session. So we are going to understand, first of all, different terminologies associated with the budget. So quite often you come across concepts like or terminologies like fiscal deficit and revenue deficit and other things. So what are they really all about? So the agenda for this session is, first of all, we'll understand different terminologies associated with the budget. For example, quite often you come across terminologies such as a fiscal deficit and revenue deficit. So what are they really all about? And we'll also understand where the government gets money from and where the government spends or government intends to spend on different things in the coming year, because that is what the budget is all about. In the financial year, what is the estimate of the government? How much will be the revenue of the government and how much will be the expenses, and where the government is going to spend money on. So that is what budget is all about. And then definitely we'll understand important budget proposals related to different sectors, because there are, we'll not go through each and every proposal because there are just too many proposals. So we'll pick up the important ones out of that. And most importantly, we'll understand the economic implications of different budget proposals, because, just knowing the proposals and this is what the finance minister has proposed and this is what it is, it is always better to know the economics behind that and what will be the economic implications behind that. And then at the end, I will give you my verdict of the budget. Of course, this is that will be my view of the budget. Doesn't necessarily mean that everyone should have the same opinion, but this is one of the views that I have formed from the budget. Most important takeaways from the budget, I would say, is a big focus on infrastructure. That is, say, 11,11,111 crores. So that is the amount allocated for infrastructure. Things such as, say, railways and roads and power plants and things like that. Then there is a subtle attempt to woo the important allies. As you all know, Janata Dal United from Bihar and Telugu Desam from Andhra Pradesh are important allies, and the government depends on the support from these two allies for the survival. Okay, so there is a subtle attempt to woo these important allies. So whether or not they are satisfied with the provisions of the budget, that is something we'll have to see. Then there's an attempt to incentivize hiring by the employers. Now, in the recently concluded elections, the unemployment was one issue. And actually, it is not very realistic expectations. Okay, yeah. So Nara Lokesh has thanked the Prime Minister. So TDP seems to be happy. Yes. So unemployment was one of the reasons which was portrayed in the press about what is because of which the verdict came the way it came. So people were somewhat dissatisfied with the employment situation in the country. Now, if everyone wants government job, then it is not a very realistic expectation to keep from any government, because how many government jobs can you create? You just can't go on creating indefinite or infinite number of government jobs. But at the end of the day, common people don't think of all these things. So whichever government is in power faces the brunt of the anger of the people. So that seems to have happened in the elections as well. And one point which is somewhat disappointing, this has been the case for last actually 2 years, since 2023. This has been the case that budget speech doesn't have too many specifics. In the sense, the budget speech mentions that we will do this or we will undertake a comprehensive review of some XYZ thing. But there are 2 points associated with that. That first of all, does it have to be mentioned in the budget speech? Because anyway, that is a part of day-to-day government functioning. So in budget, what we are looking for is more specifics. And unfortunately, that is something which is missing. So I'll come to that as we go along. And then hike in taxes is one pain point. So economic survey was presented just the day before the budget was tabled in the parliament. That is, so economic survey was presented on 22nd July for 2024. So it's like an elaborate document on the state of the economy in last 1 year. And it is prepared by the Ministry of Finance, the bureaucrats in Ministry of Finance. So it basically discusses all the factors affecting the state of the economy in the current year and also what is likely to happen in the future and what are the possible dangers that Indian economy faces and what should be done about it. And in addition to that, it also makes some recommendations to the government. Now, of course, these recommendations are not binding to the government. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also simultaneously show the website of India Budget. So this is a website of Union Budget and Finance Minister's budget speech and everything, all the annexures to the budget and all the important memorandum, everything related to budget is mentioned there. And also this economic survey is also here. So it is quite an elaborate document. Sam, it easily runs into some 700 pages. So I don't think anyone actually goes through entire document. But from whatever thing I've come across in the press, they have not mentioned anything very important in the economic survey. So the key takeaways from economic survey is that GDP growth rate projected at 7% in this financial year. Now, usually the way it works is when the budget is presented on 1st of February, they talk about the GDP, the projected GDP growth rate in the current year as well as in the next financial year. But because this the budget presented on 1st of February was just an interim budget, and this was a full budget. So it happened right in the middle of the financial year. So they talked about just current financial year and not the next financial year. And then inflation is projected at around 4%. So which is better than many countries. So that way we are doing good. And once inflation is in control, the government has leverage on doing a lot of other things. Then this is the background on which the budget was presented. Now, first of all, as you all know, the election results were shocking. Government just scraped through. So they were aiming at getting 400 seats and that did not happen. And moreover, the ruling party lost majority. And because of allies, they were able to come back to power. Yeah, so isn't the rising food inflation a huge problem? See, when we talk about inflation, food inflation is just one part of it. Because the way inflation inflation is measured is that you create a basket of important goods and services that people usually consume, and then track the prices of that basket of goods and services over the time. So the inflation, when you consider the entire basket, seems to be in control. It's not just skyrocketing inflation kind of things. Then dependence on allies in Bihar and Andhra Pradesh for the survival of the government, and in improving tax collection, which is a good sign. Because for the first time in the month of March, the GST collection crossed 2 lakh crores. And of course, because it was a month of March, so a lot of spending happens in the month of March because all the companies want to finish their spending targets or whatever you want to call before the end of the financial year. So because of that, usually in the month of March, the GST collection is always high. But still, it crossed 2 lakh crores for the first time, which is a good sign. And this declining productivity in agriculture, farmer suicides, and rural distress. Now, I've been conducting similar kind of sessions on budget analysis for last at least 7-8 years. And unfortunately, this is one line which I never had to change. That declining productivity in agriculture, farmer suicides, and rural distress. I so much wish that when I conduct this session next year, I will not have to write this line, but let's see. And then global uncertainty over issues in the Middle East. That Israel and Palestine issue, and Israel and Hamas. And although it did not really escalate as much as people probably feared, but still that uncertainty is still there. And thankfully, the crude oil prices are not very high these days. So this is the overall background on which this budget was presented. Now, in the budget, you'll come across two important terminologies. That is a budgeted estimate and revised estimates. So the way it works is, say on 1st of February 2023, the budget for year 2023-24 was presented. So the budgeted estimates for the year 23-24 were presented on that day. So what it means is the government's estimate on the total revenue of the government and total expenditure in the next financial year. So that is a financial year starting from 1st of April 2023 and ending on 31st of March 2024. So in the next financial year, what is the estimate of the government? Now, considering the size of the economy of India, you cannot get to the you cannot project the exact numbers to the last rupee. So the budgeted estimates are always, some sort of round figures. And then on 1st of February 2024, when the budget was presented on 1st of February, so the budgeted estimates for 24-25 were presented. And so it was just an interim budget. So the actual numbers were presented just yesterday. That is a different story. But this is how it works. So every year when the budget is presented, the revised estimates for the current financial year are also presented. That means when the budget was presented in February 23, the government presented the numbers of estimates of total revenue as well as expenditure of the government in the year starting from 1st of April 23 and ending on 31st of March 24. Now, the budget was presented on 1st of February 24. So that time, some 10 months of the financial year 23-24 had passed. And now the government has better idea about the total, about the actual, how the actual numbers will be. Because when the numbers were presented in February 23, they were just raw estimates. Now, after 10 months of the financial year have passed, the government now has better idea about what will be the numbers for the current financial year. So these are called revised estimates. I'm going to I'm going to display all those numbers in just a moment from now. And then the actual numbers for the financial year are always known on the last day of the year, that is 31st of March 24. Then next year, when the budget is presented in February 25, so what will be the budgeted estimates for the next financial year, that is 25-26 will be presented, and the revised estimates for this financial year, that is 24-25 will be present. And the actuals for this financial year will be known on 31st of March next year. So this is how it works every year. Okay. So whenever the budget is presented, they present the projections for the estimates for the next financial year, as well as the revised estimates for this financial year. And then before we get into the further nitty-gritties, just one point that there are three types of accounts of Government of India. Now, first is a Consolidated Fund of India. That is a government revenues and expenditure on normal activities. That comes under Consolidated Fund of India. Now, parliamentary approval is needed for every single rupee that the government wants to spend out of this Consolidated Fund of India. So the budget is all about Consolidated Fund of India. And then there is something called Contingency Fund of India. So what is that? Is there could be some unforeseen situations. For example, if there is a natural calamity, some flooding or unfortunate earthquake or whatever it is, or suddenly if there is a war. then you can go to parliament at that time of emergency and get approval from the parliament because you don't have time. So what government does every year is that out of the budget, certain amount is moved or certain amount is shifted from consolidated fund of India to contingency fund of India every year, because you never know when the contingency will arrive, right? And at that time, the government can spend out of this contingency fund of India. So that is on emergency activities. And so when the parliament approves, Lok Sabha approves the budget, the amount that is shifted from consolidated fund to contingency fund is also approved. So the government does not have to take approval of the parliament again when they spend out of contingency fund of India. And then there is something called public account of India. So what is that? That is the amount that belongs to people. For example, people invest through, say, Provident Fund and then National Savings Certificate, Kisan Vikas Patra, and things like that. So that amount actually belongs to people, but it doesn't have to be returned immediately. So if I buy some National Savings Certificate, I will get back my money after 7 years. So government can make use of that money during that time, during those 7 years. So the parliamentary approval is not needed for public accounts, expenditure out of public account of India. Okay, so budget is all about consolidated fund of India and not about other two. Now, just one side note is that, say, Bill Clinton was president of the United States from 1993 to 2001. And it is often said that he was the first president in like 150 years or more who gave a very strong economy to America. And he was the first president in 150 years who had budget surplus. But in reality, it was not the budget surplus. Okay, so he played a clever trick. And some expenditure that should have been charged on consolidated fund of America, he charged it to public account of America. Okay, so he spent amount from the social security that Americans pay for, and that is how he was going to show budget surplus. It was some sort of a clever trick. Anyway, then there are some other terminologies, that is, say, revenue account and capital account. Now, students from commerce background will be definitely able to relate with this better. That is, revenue account affects the profit and loss account of the government. That is, say, the operations for only 1 year. So government gets a revenue income that is in the form of taxes, and there are some day-to-day expenditures. Yes, that is expenditure on, say, paying the salaries and maintenance and things like that. So that comes under revenue account. And what is capital account is that it affects the balance sheet of the government. That is for longer term. Now, if the government, say, builds a power plant by spending, say, 10,000 crore rupees, and that is going to last for, say, 50 years. So does it mean that entire 10,000 crore rupees expenditure should be shown in this year? The answer is no, because that asset is going to last for more than 1 year. What they do is they amortize the expenditure over the years in the form of depreciation. So students from commerce background will definitely be able to relate with what I'm talking about. Okay, so the what is capital expenditure? That is the expenditure incurred on creating assets. Or in case the government has borrowed in the form of bonds and other things, then the repayment of principals goes into capital account, and the repayment of interest goes into revenue account. So this is how it works. Okay. Then there are two terminologies that we often come across is revenue deficit and fiscal deficit. So what is revenue deficit? That is the revenue expenditure minus revenue income. That is excess revenue expenditure over revenue income. So what it meant by that is, so in order to understand this better, we have this table. So suppose the government has got 10,000 rupees from taxes. So that is revenue income. That is from day-to-day activities of the government through taxes. So it has got 10,000 rupees. And the revenue expenditure. So what is revenue expenditure? On day-to-day expenditure, such as, say, paying salaries and maintenance and things like that. So suppose that is 12,000 rupees. So the difference between the two, that is 2000 is the revenue deficit. So government is will have to spend 2000 rupees more on day-to-day activities than the amount of taxes it is expecting to get. So that is called revenue deficit. And uh, suppose the capital receipts. So what are capital receipts other than borrowing? So what is capital receipts other than borrowing? Say debt repayment. So there are so many PSUs. Okay, say ONGC and those PSUs. And in case they have taken loan from the government, those companies repay their loan taken from the government. So that will come under capital receipt for the government of India. Okay. And similarly, when government goes for disinvestment. So what is disinvestment? There are n number of PSUs. There are so many government banks. SBI is there, then Punjab National Bank, and then there are companies like say GAIL India, Gas Authority of India Limited, and then ONGC. So many different government entities are there, and government has shareholding in all these companies. So at times what happens is government sells some part of the shareholding to the private companies or the private entities. So that process is called disinvestment. And by selling the shares of the government holding, whatever amount the government gets, that is the capital receipt other than borrowing. So suppose that is 4,000 rupees. And what is capital expenditure? Capital expenditure is the expenditure on creating long-term assets. So building roads and then power plants and refineries and things like that. So suppose that is 5,000 rupees. So the total expenditure of the government is 12,000 plus 5,000. That comes out to be 17,000 rupees. Okay. And what is the income of the government? 10,000 through taxes and 4,000 through debt repayment and disinvestment and things like that. So total 14,000. Right? So the difference between the two is fiscal deficit. That is 3,000. Now, immediately you might have one question is, how can you have more expenditure than the income? The way it works is the government borrows from the market, from the financial market, in the form of government bonds. Okay? So government will borrow from the different banks and other financial institutions to the extent of 3,000 rupees by selling government bonds. And this is how the government bridges the expenditure. Now, as you can see that the higher the fiscal deficit, what's going to happen is the government will have to borrow more and more from the financial market. Okay? And more part of the revenue expenditure will go on paying the interest on the loan that the government has taken. As a result, the government will have less amount for everything else. Okay, so our government will have less amount for creating a long-term infrastructure and things like that. So the point is, the government should aim at reducing the fiscal deficit. Otherwise, it has some undesirable consequences. Okay, and another undesirable consequences of high fiscal deficit is that, say, now I'm going to show some numbers. Okay, so right here, so these are the numbers on the website of the India budget that I showed you some time back. And can you see here borrowing and other liabilities? This is borrowing, which is 7. Just a minute. Okay. The serial number 7. And the budgeted estimate for 2024-25 is 16,13,312 crores. Just imagine the amount. It's a humongous amount, 16 lakh crores. Okay. So if there is one big entity called government, which is borrowing from the market to the extent of 16 lakh crores, which is a huge, huge amount. Okay. So what happens is, all of the private players, including people like you and me, when we borrow for home loan, okay, or other types of loans, there is less money available for that as the government borrowing increases. As a result, what happens is the interest rates in the economy will go up. Okay, so which is not a very good sign. Okay, therefore, government should aim at reducing the fiscal deficit. So this is one economic aspect of that. Now coming to these numbers, I would like, so these specific numbers are not very important. Nobody is going to ask you the numbers to the last rupee, but this is just to give you an idea about the size of the tax receipts and the expenditure of the government. So the budgeted estimate for the government for revenue receipts, that is mainly it's a tax revenue. So what is tax revenue? The government expects to get 25,83,499 crores. 25,83,000 crores. This is the expected tax revenue of the government. And you can see this is something called net to center. So what is that? Whatever is the total tax that the government of India collects. So what are the different types of tax? First of all, it is income tax from people like you and me. There is corporate tax that companies pay, and also there is GST. Okay. So out of all, and there are other types of taxes such as say customs duty. So out of all these taxes that the government of India gets, government of India shares, the central government shares certain part with the state governments as per the recommendations of the Finance Commission. So I think the current recommendations of the Finance Commission is that some 45% revenue of the government of India should be shared with the state governments. So the central government gives certain amount to different state governments. That is about 45% of the total tax income of the government. So whatever number that we are seeing here is net to the center. That is after sharing that 45% with the state governments, which is expected to be 25,83,000 crores, which is again a huge amount. And then there is non-tax revenue. So that is to the order of 5,45,000. So what is that? What is non-tax revenue? That is mainly in the form of dividends, because government has shareholding in so many companies, such as the State Bank of India and then ONGC and all those companies. So whatever dividends the shareholders get out of that, the government gets that dividend, and that comes under non-tax revenue. That is 5,45,000. And then you can see here, I have just done the back of the envelope calculations, is that the government expects that there will be 11% hike in the tax revenue in the next financial year. That is, the revised estimate for this year is 23,26,000 crores tax revenue. It is expected to go to 25,83,000 crores. So which is about 11% hike. So I have been tracking these numbers for last many years, and it is always in this range, 10 to 14%. So nothing unusual in these numbers. And then there is other receipts, that is 50,000 crores. So government expects to get 50,000 crore rupees from disinvestment. Now, about 2 years ago, government did disinvestment in Air India, and the disinvestment in BPCL and other companies is also being considered. Okay, so it is expected to get 50,000 crores through disinvestment. And if you add everything up, that comes to total receipt. So the is 48,20,000 crores. So this is the size of the total receipts of government of India, which is very, very huge amount. Okay. And then sometime back, I said that government intends to spend 11,11,111 crores, which is, you can see in serial number 13 right here. That is on creating long-term assets, infrastructure. Okay. So this is how the government intends to spend the amount. Okay. And then you can see revenue deficit is 1 and into bracket something like 1.8 is written. So what is 1.8? 1.8% of the GDP. And similarly, fiscal deficit, it is 4.9% of the GDP. Okay. Now, initially up to 2019, the fiscal situation was improving. The fiscal deficit as a percent of GDP was going down. But in 2020, as you all know, the COVID struck, and because of that, government had to hike the expenditure to unprecedented levels, and because of which fiscal deficit went high up to 9%. And since then, it has been again coming down, and the latest numbers is 4.9%. And the aim is that we should go to 4% of GDP in next 2 years. So this is a aim. So let's see whether government is able to achieve that or not. Then when it comes to budget speech, there are two parts of the budget speech. So part A is the expenditure proposal and part B is the income proposal. So and before we get to the individual proposals for different sectors, this is another part, that is a part B, that is a total revenue of the government. So the income side of the numbers that I wanted to show. Okay. So I'll just zoom this a bit. Yeah. So the numbers in the last column are the budgeted estimates for 24-25 for the next financial year. And I would like to catch your attention to these numbers here. The income tax, 11,87,000 crores. So people like you and me are going to pay 11,87,000 crores to the government. Corporate tax is 10,20,000 crores. So companies are going to pay, are expected to pay 10,20,000 crores. Okay. Now, if you compare these numbers, mostly they are, the total income tax collection and total corporate tax collection is more or less same, some 10% here and there. Okay, so sometimes corporate tax is slightly more. For example, it happened in 23-24 budgeted estimates, or sometimes the income tax is more. So but still, these two numbers are almost comparable. And then customs duty, 2,37,000 crores. And then union excise duties. So what are these? As you all know, petroleum and liquor are the two products that are still not under GST. Okay, so the excise duties are levied on these two products. So that comes to the order of 3,19,000 crores. And then GST. Another point I want to bring to your attention, GST is 10,61,899 crores. So almost 10,62,000 crores. So what is this GST? This number is the central government's collection of the GST. Now, I'm sure all of you would have noticed one thing, that whenever we go to the market and buy something, we get a receipt, and on that, two numbers of GST are written. One part, 50%, is the central government's GST, and other part of the remaining 50% is the state government's part of GST. So the GST is divided between the central government and the state government in 50-50 ratio. So this 10,61,000, this number is the central government's expected collection. So this does not include state government's expected collection, because otherwise one question anyone would have asked is, say recently in the month of March, the GST collection crossed say 2 lakh crores. And even if we assume say 1.8 lakh or 1.7 lakh crores every month over next 12 months, then obviously that comes to be more than 10,61,000. So how is it that? The reason is this. This is the central government's collection. And then there is something called GST compensation cess. So 1,51,000 crores. So what is that? Is so after GST came into picture in 2017, all the other indirect taxes were subsumed by GST. So instead of paying, say, excise duty and sales tax and service tax and this tax and that tax, instead of paying so many taxes, just integrate everything in one tax, that is GST, and just file that one tax. So that one indirect tax. So that was the whole idea of GST. Now, after before GST came into picture, was imposed, the state governments were free to hike taxes in their individual states. For example, say state government of Maharashtra feels that they can get additional revenue by increasing sales tax on say certain items. So state governments were free to do that. Now, after GST came into picture, then everything is decided by the GST Council, not by the central government as such, but by the GST Council. So which has the representatives of all the state governments as well as central government. So everything is decided by the GST Council. They decide how much GST should be charged on different items. So that right of the state governments to charge higher tax in their respective states has been taken out. Okay? So one concern which was raised by different state governments is that what if the amount of GST collection we get through that happens to be lower than what we earlier used to get. Okay, so we should be compensated for that. So that was one concern raised by state governments. So the answer to that is GST compensation sets. So what did the central government say is that, okay, if you have this concern, then let's take your state tax revenue for the year 2016-2017. Let's take that as a base. And every year, if your GST collection is less than 14% of that, okay, so 14% year-on-year increase. Okay, in that case, we will compensate you. So the idea was take 2016-17 GST, 2016-17 state tax revenue, take that as a base, and every year it should go on increasing by 14%. And if the GST that a particular state government gets is, if it is less than that number, then the government of India, the central government, will pay the difference. So this is the idea of GST compensation cess. So initially it was decided that GST compensation cess would be applicable for 5 years up to 2022. But later on it was extended, and I don't know when it is going to end. But whenever you buy a car, or say even those Bisleri and other aerated waters, or say cigarettes, for some items like this, additional GST, that is GST compensation cess, is imposed. So what does the government of India do with that? It collects this amount and then distributes it to the state government if there is a shortfall in revenue. So this is GST compensation cess. So one point I would like to bring to your attention here is just compare the numbers of the corporate tax, 10,20,000 crores, income tax that individuals like you and me pay, 11,87,000 crores, and GST, 10,62,000 crores. Okay, so all these three numbers are in a way comparable, so they are not hugely different from each other, maybe about 10% here and there. Okay, so many times you'll come across the claims that, hey, we income tax payers are the taxpayers, and but that is only the part of the story. Okay, because GST is paid by everyone. Okay, and that amount is also not small. And in fact, if you add the state contribution, the actual GST is two times this, 10,61,000 crores. So it will come out to be almost double the income taxes that people like you and me pay. So this is just to bring to your notice. Okay. And then before we get to the specific budget proposals, there is one terminology that I would like to bring to your notice, that is PPP, that is public-private partnership. So what is that? Because many times in the budget over the years, government talks about PPP model. So what is that? Is say all of you have seen these kind of toll plazas on different highways. So the way it works is, ideally the government should build roads and highways, but government cannot go everywhere and build highways. So what has government done is that it has invited the private players. Hey, you come up and then you build highway out of your own expenditure. Now, why would anyone want to do that? Why would any private company want to build the highway out of its own expenditure. So government has given them a right to collect toll. And that is how the private companies that build these highways recover the amount they have spent on building that highway. So this is called public-private partnership, and usually build, operate, and transfer model. So you build a highway, operate. That is, you collect toll over like 15 years or 20 years, whatever is the time period. And then after that period is over, then transfer the highway. And after that, it will become the property of Government of India. So that is how it works. So this is called public-private partnership. Now we will begin with the specific proposals of the budget. The focus on some social groups: farmers, poor, youth, and women. Now beginning with agriculture. Okay. Now this is one problem I have with this year's as well as previous year's budget. Up to 2022, it was in a way good, in the sense that there were some specific proposals. It's not just some statements like, say, comprehensive review of agriculture research to promote better productivity. But what does that mean? If I have to tell students that this is one budget proposal, but there is nothing concrete in that comprehensive review of agriculture research. Now, another point is, does this have to be in the budget speech at all? Because that can be one of the statements made by Shivraj Singh Chauhan, Agriculture Minister. Okay, so even he can make that statement that we will undertake comprehensive review of agriculture research. Anyway, so this is what it is. And then another such, at the beginning of the session, I said that there are not too many specifics in this budget. So this is one example, and there are a lot of such examples. For example, then National Cooperation Policy for Development of Cooperative Sectors. Atmanirbharta in oilseed production. But what are you actually going to do? How much amount are you planning to spend? The budget speech is mum on that. This is not to say that everything is just hanging in air. Later on, the Ministry of Agriculture will come up with all these proposals, and then they will implement it. But when it comes to budget speech, there are no specifics like this. Release of 109 high-yielding crops, maybe little bit of that, and 1 crore farmers to be initiated into natural farming. But how much will be the budgetary allocation for that? No mention of that in the budget speech. Financing for shrimp to be provided under NABARD, that is that National Agricultural Bank and Rural Development. So financing for shrimp cultivation will be provided under that. But how many crore rupees will be provided? It is mum. Okay. Then digital crop survey will be conducted in 400 districts, and digital public infrastructure for land will be done in 3 years' time. So if I'm a lay person, then from these proposals, actually, I can sense that something is being done. But what is the specific? Unfortunately, I can't tell you that, because there is for the reason that the budget speech itself doesn't talk about that. So what am I going to tell you about it? As you mentioned some time back, unemployment situation was one factor that hit the government hard in the elections. So there are some proposals about employment and skilling. Now, 1 month wage incentive up to 15,000 rupees to all new entrants to the workforce in formal sectors. So what are formal sectors? The company should be registered. So it's not informal. That is, say, किसी के दुकान पर किसी को काम को लगा दिया. That is informal sector. But if a entity is registered with the government and then it employs someone, that comes under formal sector. So 1 month wage incentive up to 15,000 to all new entrants. So I don't know if there is any wage cap on this or salary cap on this, because say 2 years down the line, when you finish your MBA, and in case you are a fresher, as of now, you will also be a new entrant to the workforce in formal sector at some point of time within next, say, 2-3 years. So will you be eligible for getting this incentive? Probably not, because most likely there will be some salary cap. Because if you are earning, say, more than 1 lakh rupees per month, probably government will not pay this amount. Okay? Then Government will reimburse EPFO contribution of employers up to 3,000 rupees per month for 2 years for new hires. Now, in case you are a working professional, you would know that a part of your salary is cut and that goes to EPFO, that is Employee Provident Fund. Okay? And equal amount is contributed by your employer, by your company. So what the government is saying is that up to 3,000 rupees per month for 2 years for new hires. So government will reimburse this EPFO contribution. They are expecting that this will act as an incentive because ultimately it will reduce the cost of employees for different companies. And then incentives to employees and employers for EPFO contributions, then 1,000 ITIs, Industrial Technical Institutes, will be upgraded. And then syllabus will be upgraded to reflect the requirements of the industry. And then 20 lakh youth to be skilled over the next 5 years. Right? So how much is the budgetary allocation for that? There is no mention of that in the budget speech as such. It will be there. It will be mentioned somewhere in, say, one of those, sometime back I showed you that India budget website, and there are a lot of documents on that website. So it may be there somewhere in one of those documents. Okay. But for our purpose, we don't need to get into all the nitty-gritty. So these are the salient features of the budget. Then financial support up to 10 lakh rupees for higher education in the country and 3% interest subvention. So that means if someone wants to take education loan, then government will offer say 3% less interest on that. And then it will be guaranteed up to 10 lakh rupees per student. Okay? For higher education only in the country. And that also makes sense. Because if someone wants to go out of India for higher studies, then why should government of India pay for that? Okay? It won't. Now, at this point, I would like to bring to your attention one experience that United States of America faced. That sometime in 1960s, when Lyndon Johnson was the president of US, so he declared war on poverty. Right? Sometimes we feel that all Americans are rich. It's not so. Not all are rich. There is a good number of poor people in America as well. Okay? So the President Johnson declared war on poverty in America. And one of the things as a part of package that he offered, one of the points is something similar. That if you want to go for higher education, then you can get centrally sponsored loan. They call it some FAFSA or something. It has some full form. Okay, so federally assisted something. Okay, so essentially the idea is that students can get government of America sponsored loans for higher education. Now there was a problem. Why was that a problem? Because the loan was available, a lot of students went for higher education. So is it a good thing or a bad thing? Of course, it is a good thing that if people are going for higher education, but wait, if people are going for education that offers them a promise of getting a good job later, then it makes sense. No? Because a lot of people went for studies of, some things which did not have really good employment prospects later. For example, say a BA in philosophy and study of Plato and Aristotle's philosophy. I'm not saying that it is a bad thing, but when it comes to getting employment, such degree doesn't add too much of value on the CV. Okay? And that happened with many, unfortunately, with many people. Okay? And later on, it turned out that after passing bachelor's degree in, say, some subject which did not have good enough employment prospects, they did not get good enough jobs. And on the one hand, they had a lot of student loan piling up on their personal accounts. And later on, they did not get job which was good enough to be able to repay the loan installments. Right? And because of that, a lot of people are facing financial trouble in America. Right? Well, on the other hand, if people are going for, say, some higher education that offers good prospects of getting employment, good job, then it absolutely makes sense. If someone wants to go for medical, or someone wants to go for, say, artificial intelligence or whatever, then it makes absolute sense. But if people who otherwise, so that happened in America, if people who otherwise could not get jobs after 12th standard went for higher education just because loan was available, and immediately they did not have to pay, and later on they face this problem. So of course, America of 1960s was much different from India of today. So we have still a long way to reach to where America was in 1960s. So I'm not saying that immediately we'll face this problem, but there is a possibility that sometime in the future we will also face similar situation. Anyway, then internships to 1 crore youth over next 5 years in top 500 companies. So this is one good proposal in the budget. Now, I don't know what is the definition of top 500 companies and on what basis government is going to select those top 500 companies, whatever it is. But internship stipend of 5,000 rupees per month and one-time allowance of 6,000 rupees will be provided by the government to those interns, to total 1 crore over next 5 years. Okay? And then companies to bear the costs of training of those interns and 10% cost of stipend through CSR expenditure. So what is CSR? Corporate social responsibility. And the companies have to spend 2% of their profit on socially responsible activities. So companies have to spend 10% of cost of stipend and the cost of training of those interns through CSR expenses. So these are the proposals for employment and skilling. But out of these proposals, there is no direct proposal as such for that will result in creating jobs. Okay, out of these, that proposal will come slightly later, and maybe we'll discuss the economic consequences of that at that time when we discuss infrastructure. Then this is where Purvodaya, this is where the things become more interesting. Now, there is a lot of emphasis on Bihar and Andhra Pradesh. And obviously, political undertones to that are not hidden for the simple reason that government depends on the allies from Bihar and Andhra Pradesh for survival. Yeah? So, Amritsar Kolkata Industrial Corridor will be built and with industrial node at Gaya in Bihar. And then plan for endowment-rich states in East, that is Bihar, Jharkhand, Bengal, Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, for generation of economic opportunities to attain Vikasit Bharat by 2047. But again, unfortunately, there is no specific, there are no specifics. Then what is your exact plan? They're just saying that there will be a plan for these states. But what is it all about? Unfortunately, the budget speech is mum on that. Then more than 100 branches of India Post Payment Bank to be set up in the Northeast. And then Pradhan Mantri Janajatiya Unnata Gram Abhiyan for improving the socio-economic conditions in tribal communities in some 63,000 villages. Total beneficiaries 5 crores. And then for Andhra Pradesh, a Polavaram irrigation project to be completed after decades of delay. Now, after yesterday I was watching this speech by Nirmala Sitharaman, and when she mentioned this Polavaram irrigation project, and I did a little bit of Googling, and what I found was the initial idea was of this Polavaram project was more than 100 years old. And finally, in 1980, the foundation stone for that project was laid by the then Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh. And in 2004, Y.S. Rajashekar Reddy, after he became Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, he did the Bhumi Pujan of that. And then work got started. And even 20 years down the line, it is still not complete. Right? So that project will be completed after decades of delay. And then financial support of 15,000 crores to Andhra Pradesh government. So one concern was that, and all these are the proposals in the new Telangana Andhra Pradesh bifurcation bill. Because in 2014, when the new state of Telangana was carved out of erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, one concern was that important city like Hyderabad and other areas, and also those irrigation, the areas with good irrigation will go to Telangana, and then the remaining part of Andhra Pradesh will have to bear losses because of that. So there was mention in that Andhra Pradesh bifurcation bill of this financial support to government of Andhra Pradesh. So as a part of that, they're promising to give 15,000 crores to government of Andhra Pradesh. And then essential infrastructure such as water, power, railways, and roads in Kopparthi node on Vishakhapatnam, Chennai industrial corridor, and Urvakal node on Hyderabad, Bangalore industrial corridor. So these Andhra specific proposals. And then grants for backward regions of Rayalaseema, Prakasam district, and coastal Andhra, as per Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act, will be provided. Okay? Now, one political undertone to this is that, say, Chandrababu Naidu joined NDA in 2014 as well, and up to 2018 he was a part of NDA, and he was insisting on getting the special status for the state of Andhra Pradesh. And Prime Minister Modi pointed out to him that we cannot give you special status because as per law, the special status can be given only to hilly states. That is the states in the northeast and maybe Himachal and Uttarakhand. So states like this. So we can't give you special status because of that reason. But other than that tag or special status, whatever else you want, we will give you. Okay? But somehow that led to differences between the two. And then 2018, TDP left NDA, and they also brought first no confidence motion against Modi government. And during the reply to that debate, Prime Minister Modi mentioned all these things, that I was willing to give you everything, whatever you wanted, except for that tag of special status. And Chandrababu Naidu was insisting on that special status. So now, just as one student pointed out, Lokesh, Chandrababu Naidu's son, has expressed satisfaction over whatever the state of Andhra Pradesh has got. So hopefully there will be no friction from this point onwards on this issue. Yeah. Anyway. Then there are a lot of proposals for Bihar. Okay. Road connectivity projects. Patna Purnia Expressway, Bhagalpur Buxar Expressway, new two-lane bridge on River Ganga in Buxar, and then 2400 megawatt power plant at a place named Birpainti, and total cost of 21,400 crores. So this is one proposal, one specific, or these are some of the specific proposals that I was looking for in the budget. But so except for these proposals, there are not too many specifics. Then new airports, medical colleges, sports infrastructure in Bihar. But what new airports? Where are you planning to build new airports? Where are you planning to build new medical colleges? Unfortunately, no specifics. Request from Bihar government for external assistance from international developmental agencies will be processed on fast track. And then Vishnupada temple in Gaya and Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya. So these are temples of religious importance. So those temple corridors will be to be developed on the lines of Kashi Vishwanath corridor. And then comprehensive review of development of Rajgir. So there is yet another important religious destination. So they will come up with the proposal for development of Rajgir for tourism purposes. And then development of Nalanda as a tourist destination as well. In addition to restoring Nalanda University to its past glory. Restoring Nalanda University to its past glory may be a very distant aim or a very distant dream, but whatever it is, but development of Nalanda as a tourist destination is also one of the aims. And then flood controls measures in Bihar to prevent Kosi river flooding, because almost every year, or if not every year, almost every alternate year, there is flooding in Bihar in river Kosi. Okay? So there will be flood control measures for that. And then similar projects in other states such as Uttarakhand, Assam, Himachal, and Sikkim. So it's not that only Bihar faces floods. There are other states also that have this problem. So they are going to have similar projects in other states. Then other proposals. So big push for infrastructure. So this is one point that I like, that provision of 11,11,111 crores for infrastructure. I wish there were some specifics that what all roads are you planning to build, what are airports are you planning to build, and what all power plants are you planning to build. Fair enough, those provisions or those specifics are not there. That amount has been made available to mostly to Nitin Gadkari's ministry. A chunk of that will go to that ministry, and that Ministry of Road Transport and Infrastructure will come up with specific proposals, and they will decide how to spend that amount. And then private investment in infrastructure to be promoted through viability gap funding. So what is viability gap funding? Is that sometime back I talked about PPP, that is public-private partnership. So the idea is that private companies build, say, a road, a highway, and they collect toll to finance the expenditure incurred on building that highway. Fair enough. But they can't, the private company can't charge as much toll as they want because the toll rates are decided by the government. Now, what if the expected traffic flow on that highway is not sufficient to fund the entire expenditure on that building the highway? Because before building the highway, every company undertakes traffic survey. Because before I joined IMS, I worked with banking, and at that time I worked in lending for infrastructure projects. So I have seen all these deals personally. So the way it works is the companies conduct or hire private agencies to conduct traffic study. So if this road is built, how many vehicles can we expect to pass through from this road? And on the basis of the rate decided by the government, how much toll can they get? And if that amount of toll is less than the amount they will have to spend for building the highway, no private company would be willing to build that highway. So in that case, what happens is the government pays the gap, there's a difference between the expenditure expected the expenditure of the company and the expected toll collection. So the difference between the two is called viability gap funding. So government pays that much amount to private company. Otherwise, no private company would be willing to build that highway. So private investment in infrastructure will be promoted through viability gap funding. And by the way, this PPP model is not just limited to roads, because as you can see, because airports are also now privatized. So airport operations are privatized. So new terminals have been built in different airports, like say Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi airport. Now Mumbai airport is being operated by Adani. GMR also operates Hyderabad and I think Delhi airports. So they have built the new terminals, and from the rent from the shops inside the airport terminal that they get, and then there are some other sources of revenue. Through that, they fund the expenses for that building the airport terminal. So this public-private partnership is there not just in the roads, but also in airports and power projects as well. Right? Then 1.5 lakh crore funding fund to provide interest-free loans to state governments for their infrastructure projects. So if state governments want to undertake their own infrastructure project, then this 1.5 lakh crore fund. So some hands are getting raised. So maybe in 5 to 10 minutes we'll be done with the presentation, and then we'll take up the questions. So that fund will provide interest-free loans to state governments, and then 25,000 crores for Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana 4.0 to provide all-season connectivity to 25,000 rural habitations, and then the rental housing, a dormitory-like structure for industrial workers through public-private partnership. So a similar model. A private company will build that rental accommodation for industrial workers, and whatever rent that workers pay, company will collect that, and through that rent, they will fund the expense for building that dormitory. And then one important point is that credit guarantee for MSMEs in manufacturing sector up to 100 crores through pooling of loans. So the way it will work is it's like in insurance. Okay? So MSMEs, if they want to join this, they have to pay some upfront fee, an annual fee, proportional to outstanding loan. So it's like insurance premium. So how does insurance work? Say life insurance. So the policy holder paid some annual premium. And out of say maybe 1 lakh policy holder, now all 1 lakh people don't die in the same at the same time in the same year. Okay, so out of those 1 lakh people, probably say 1,000 or say 2,000 people will die in 1 year. So out of the premium that the insurance company collects from all those 1 lakh policy holders, it pays the protection amount to the heirs of those people who the policyholders who have died. Okay, so something on similar lines. So if the MSMEs want to avail this credit guarantee, they have to pay an upfront fee and annual fee, something similar to the insurance premium, and that amount will be collected together. And through that, credit guarantee for MSMEs in manufacturing sector up to 100 crore loans will be given by the central government. So it's like an insurance for MSMEs. And then credit support to MSMEs during stress times. Unfortunately, again, no mention, no specifics that we will provide credit support to MSMEs during stress times. And the same thing was done at the time of lockdown also, because MSMEs face really tough time during that. So similar credit support was given at the time of lockdown also. And then PM Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. So installation of rooftop solar panels on 1 crore households. And through that, they'll be able to generate some electricity and they can use it themselves. So up to 300 units per year. So maybe for people like you and me, this is not much. But for people, poor people below the, in the lower set of the society, it's still 300 units per year is also a substantial saving for them. And then there is the NPS Vatsalya. So what is NPS new pension scheme? It's like you pay a certain amount every month, and that amount is invested in the market, and the corpus grows. And then at the age of 50, at the age of 60, you can get that corpus. So it's like, and from that you can get pension. So that is called NPS. So something similar to NPS will be started for children also. And once they turn 18, so parents can start NPS Vatsalya account in the name of children and start contributing to that account. And once the child becomes 18 years old, that account will be converted into a regular NPS account. So this is the overall scheme. And the most important point about from our point of view, that is the taxation proposals. Now, this is one problem I have with this budget. Okay? First of all, there is no change in personal tax under old tax regime. Okay? Now, as you all know, there are two tax regimes. So if you want to pay income tax, you can pay it through old tax system, old tax regime, as well as new tax regime. So what is the difference between the two? Is that under old tax regime, there are a lot of deductions and those concessions are available. For example, I pay EMI on my home loan. So up to 2 lakh rupees every year is tax deductible. So my taxable income comes down by 2 lakh rupees every year because of the interest I pay on my home loan. Right? Then there is something called ATC. That is, if you invest into some financial assets, then you get so your taxable income reduces to that extent. So there are a lot of deductions and those concessions are available under old tax regime. Then in 2020, Nirmala Sitharaman came up with this idea of new tax regime. So the idea is in a way good, that instead of having so many deductions and exemptions and other things and making this tax structure so complicated, just hike the tax deductible income amount. So as of now, in the old tax regime, it is 2.5 lakhs. So hike it. make it higher. Don't charge any tax up to a slightly higher amount. And then don't offer any exemption, don't offer any deductions, make it simple. And then accordingly charge the income tax. So that is new tax regime. Now the problem is that after this new tax regime has come, there is absolutely no change in the income tax for old tax regime. Now that is one pain point, because the reason is, when someone like me took home loan, that was before 2020, when this new tax regime came up. Okay, so this tax deduction through the EMI payment is also one of the considerations that I had at the back of my mind, because I will have to pay less tax, and then I will have to that extent my take-home salary will go up. Then I had already started some investment under ATC and other things. Okay, so it's not that just because new tax regime has come up, overnight I can't stop that investment, because there is a lock-in and all those problems are there. Okay, so I have to continue making payment on that. And while there is no change in the old tax regime slabs, okay, since so in 2014, the ATC amount was hiked from 1 lakh rupees to ATC deduction amount was hiked from 1 lakh rupees to 1.5 lakh rupees. And in 2017-18, there was additional 5% tax slab was introduced. But other than that, for last 10 years, actually, middle class has not got much in terms of tax benefits. Whatever tax benefits is going through new tax regime. Right? Now, people who are joining the workforce afresh. So maybe for you, it will benefit, because once you join post your MBA, once you start working, then obviously you may not have to make investments under ATC and other things to save tax. And you can straight away opt for new tax regime and pay less tax. But how about people like me? Okay, so that is one pain point. And that is why a lot of people are complaining about this budget. And then under new tax regime, hike in standard deduction from 50,000 to 75,000, but nothing under old tax regime. And then slight revision of IT slabs under new tax regime. So some more tax concessions. So what they're saying is someone earning up to say 15 lakh rupees per annum can save about 17,500 rupees per year. So that is how it is. And then the point number 4, 5, 6 are the real pain points. Okay, so short-term capital gain tax and long-term capital gain tax have been hiked. So what is that? What is capital gain? Say I make transaction in the share market. If I buy a share for say 100 rupees and sell it for 250 rupees, okay, the difference between the two, so the profit of 150 rupees I make, that is called capital gain. And government imposes tax on that capital gain. And then what is short term and long term? So short term for shares, anything less than 1 year is short term, and anything more than 1 year is long term. So if I sell a share within 1 year, it will come under short term capital gain. And if I sell a share after 1 year, it will come under long term capital gain. Now, the short term capital gain tax has been hiked from 15% to 20%. And long-term capital gain tax has been hiked from 10% to 12.5%. So, which is like killing, because just the other day I was going through an article, and it was mentioned that there are some 15 crore demat account holders in the country. Now, all of them may not be investing in stock market, but even if we assume that say 1/3 of them, 5 crore people, have investments in the stock market, even if we assume that, but still it's going to hurt them a lot. Okay? And one of my friends is a CA, and he does this work on filing tax returns and all. And many times people are not aware of this long-term capital gain tax and short-term capital gain tax. And when the market was going up, then some of his clients sold a lot of their shareholdings, and they were completely unaware that it would attract this long-term capital gain tax for them. And then suddenly when it came to filing tax returns, they were shocked. And then they found that they would have to pay much more tax than they had expected to do. They had expected to pay. So, which is actually a bad thing. And because of that, the share market reacted badly, reacted negatively to this. And then hike in securities transaction tax. Then another point about this long-term capital gain tax, I want to bring to your attention. See, the short-term capital gain tax, that is, if you sell a share within 1 year, then that short-term capital gain tax was always been around. But the long-term capital gain tax has been, it was there in the past, then it was taken out, again brought in, again taken out, and it has a long history of that. Now, in 2005, when P. Chidambaram was the finance minister, he removed long-term capital gain tax. Okay? But instead, what he imposed was something called STT. So what is STT? Securities transaction tax. So whenever you buy or sell a share, every time you have to pay some tax on that transaction. That is called STT. So after long-term capital gain tax was taken out, STT was brought in to in that place. And then in 2018, Arun Jaitley brought in long-term capital gain tax, but STT was not removed. It is still there. So isn't it unjust? Unfortunately, that's the way it is. That whenever there is any new source of revenue, new source of tax revenue for the government, it never lets it go. Okay? That is a problem. And the same thing happened with service tax in that GST, that goods and service tax. So that service tax, the idea of service tax was initially brought in by Manmohan Singh when he was the finance minister back in 1994. So on telephone bills, and there was one other service. So only for those two services, he imposed some 5% service tax back in 1994. But later on, the successive governments realized that service tax was a sort of a golden goose, and they just went on expanding the scope of service tax. So initially it was limited only to telephone bill and one other service. Later on, it encompassed everything, and now everything comes under GST. So that's how it is. Once the government starts getting revenue from tax, it is very, very rare to for any government to let it go, and which is unfortunate. So government has hiked the securities transaction tax on futures and options. Now, what are futures and options? Well, they are sort of speculative tradable instruments. Now, what are futures and options? Unfortunately, we don't have time for that. It is very interesting topic in finance. So if once you go to a B school, you will have a course on this futures and options. So that has been hiked from 0.05% to 0.1 and 0.2%. Right? And then long-term capital gain tax for real estate transactions has been reduced from 20% to 12.5%, but there is a catch in that. Okay. So what is the catch? The catch is that indexation benefit is removed. So what is indexation benefit? Is that, say, let me give our own example. Okay, so it happened with us. We purchased one flat in Thane, near Mumbai in 2001 for, I think, some 10 lakh rupees. Okay, that was far away from the station. Okay, so it was available for 10 lakh rupees. Okay? Then in 2022, we sold it for, say, 80 lakh rupees. So the 10 lakh rupees of 2001 was not same as 10 lakh rupees of 2022. Okay, so it would be unjust to just calculate the total capital gain as 80 lakh minus 10 lakh, that is 70 lakh. It would be unjust. So what government used to do is that they used to provide indexation benefit. So what is indexation benefit? Government used to come up with, or rather still comes up with some numbers. So 100 rupees of 2001 is equivalent to something like 300 rupees of 2022. Okay? So the capital gain for us was not 80 lakh minus 10 lakh, but 80 lakh minus 10 lakh into that indexation factor. That was 3. Now, and then the tax is to be paid on that long-term capital gain of say 80 lakh minus 10 lakh into 3. That is 80 minus 30 or 50 lakhs. Okay, so 20% tax was to be paid on that capital gain. Now, what they have done is they have reduced this capital gain tax from 20% to 12.5%, but indexation benefit has been removed. So what is that is now you just calculate 80 minus 10, no indexation benefit, paid on 70 lakhs. Okay. Now, for some people, it will work to their benefit. For some people, it may not work to their benefit because of the reason that this tax has been reduced, but indexation benefit has been removed. So this is the overall verdict. In my personal opinion, first of all, big emphasis on infrastructure is a big plus. Once John F. Kennedy, president of US, said one thing, that it's not that we have good roads in America because we are a developed country. It's the other way around. Because we have good roads in America, we are a developed country. So the importance of having good infrastructure cannot be underplayed. We need to have good infrastructure. So it is definitely a big plus. And budget makes an attempt to address one reason for subpar performance in the general elections, that is unemployment. And then political undertones are definitely there, cannot be hidden. A specific mention of Andhra Pradesh and Bihar. And then long-term capital gain tax hike and also short-term capital gain tax hike, which is a bad step. And there were some speculations that some production-linked incentives will be hiked for different manufacturing industries. That has not been done. And then no change in IT slabs under old regime after actually not 2015, but 2017 is a big pain point. And that can potentially hurt the middle class who have largely supported BJP over the years. Okay. And then there are a few specifics in the budget speech. Just mention that we will undertake this scheme or that scheme. But what specific are you going to do? Unfortunately, it is not given. And then overall tax hikes are disappointing. So this is my verdict on the budget. So let's, some students have raised hands. Rajat, you can ask your question.
Yeah. So sir, my question to you is, so sir, like I wanted to understand, sir, your opinion on like how this budget looks like for salaried professionals, considering that, you know, there have been no changes in the old tax regime, and plus, you know, um, with increase, like with a hike in long-term capital gain tax and short-term capital gain tax. So how do you perceive this budget for, you know, the salaried professionals? Thank you.
Yeah. So from salaried professionals' point of view, definitely it is not a good budget. Because these days, a lot of people get into share market, and even if they don't directly invest in share market themselves, they do it through mutual funds. And then those long-term capital gain tax will be applicable on mutual fund sales as well. Okay? So ultimately, it's going to hurt them. So from salaried professionals' point of view, it's not a good budget. That is for sure.
Sure, sir. That answers my question.
Oh,
Thank you
sure.
for that.
Sure. Then I'm Shiv.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Sir, what can we learn from this budget as a future CAT aspirant or visibly going into GDPI?
So the question is from GDPI perspective. Okay. So I'm assuming you are going to appear for CAT 24. Okay.
Yes.
And after the CAT 24 result is out, we will have a similar session for next year's budget. Okay. So by the time when you go for the interview, this budget would be old, and February 2025 budget would be fresh. So that time we will have a similar session, and I'll give you updated information that time.
Okay, sir.
And Om.
Hello, am I
Hello.
audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so sir, I just wanted to ask, like you told about short-term capital gain tax and long-term capital gain taxes.
Mhm.
So is there any limit above which it would be, it would be charged, or it would be charged even if you sell
Uh-huh.
any of the?
Yeah, so for short-term capital gain tax, it is that provision is not there. For long-term capital gains tax, it is there. So beyond 1.25 lakhs for share market transactions, it will be taxed at 12.5%.
Okay, so and for short-term capital gain tax, there is no
No,
such
no,
provision.
it
So it will
is
be
not
taxed
there.
even if you
So
sell for
yeah, so
1,000, 2,000.
yeah, even if you make say 200 rupees profit on the short-term basis, you'll have to pay tax on that.
Oh, that answers my question. Thank you.
Sure. Then Yash.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Hello. Yes.
Sir, my doubt is that what resources do you use to understand and analyze the budget? For example, a temporal analysis wherein, for example, in Excel, I can see all the budgets of the previous year, all the estimates,
Uh-huh.
and then I can have a better understanding for it. Another could be kind of a simulator for all the five sectors of all the five types of income taxes, so I can see in which kind of budget was beneficial for which salaried employed in which year's budget, something like that.
Uh-huh. Okay, so coming to your first question. So first of all, what is your background? Are you from engineering or from commerce background or BBA? Which background are you from?
BCom, sir. BCom
BCom
honors.
background. Okay.
Yeah.
So you will be better able to understand all those nitty-gritties.
Hanji, yes.
Yeah, right. See, personally, I'm from engineering background, and whatever understanding of economics I had, I developed through my own reading, and then after I went to B school, whatever courses on economics I studied from there, economics and
Okay, sir.
finance. So I developed through that. And once
Okay.
you have uh, that basis, you will be able to analyze the budget yourself. No? So
Right.
otherwise, there are a lot of newspapers in Economic Times and Business Standard and all those business release. There are a lot of analysis on budget, but ultimately that is somebody else's analysis. So what I want
Yeah.
my students to do is say, even if you refer to somebody else's analysis, that's fine, but have your view on that. And in order to have your view, you will have to, you require certain background. And I think once you join the B school, then definitely, you will develop that background yourself. Yeah.
Right. Right.
And then coming to your second question, see, this year's budget, or rather any budget presented by Nirmala Sitharaman, okay, is not a path-breaking budget at all. Okay.
Yeah.
That way, from the taxpayer's point of view, 1997 budget by P. Chidambaram was the best, because
Okay.
it was called a dream budget that time. And then
Okay.
in terms of other proposals, Yashwant Sinha's budget of 1999 was good. And even Arun Jaitley's budget of 2015, wherein he talked about IBC, that bankruptcy code.
Yeah. Yeah. Insolvency.
So that was path-breaking. In 1999,
Okay.
Yashwant Sinha talked about the proposal of privatization of insurance. So all the private insurance companies that we see, the ICICI Prudential and all those. So that was after 1999. Earlier, there was only one LIC.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So such path-breaking proposals, unfortunately, are missing. From and also, how could I forget Manmohan Singh's budget of 1992? So
Okay.
that was really the most important budget in India's history.
Okay, sir. Sir, my issue is that I want to, so if you go to India Budget website, to understand sometimes it's too much jargon, and sometimes it's too much verbose wherein you can't get to the specifics.
Yeah.
So that is the problem,
So that will
wherein you
always
rely
happen.
on
Yeah.
Economic Times and other people's analysis.
So there are 2 points I can tell you is that once you join B school, then you will, through your economics courses and other things, you will develop understanding of some economic aspects. And even prior to that, even prior to going to B school, so
Right.
whenever you come across any particular phrase that you don't understand,
Mhm.
then just Google it and then try to find out more about it. And also these days there are a lot of YouTube videos on different aspects.
Yeah. Okay.
So that way, because before going to B school, whenever I tried to read business dailies, there are more than half of the things I did not understand. So that is how I did. I used to Google and then try to find out more about what they're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. So you can do the same thing.
Oh,
And now,
thank you so much, sir.
fortunately for you guys and girls, YouTube is very much there.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you can make full use of that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Sure. Then Kirti.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Sir, I just read an article somewhere where it was mentioning that the Finance Secretary TV Somnathan has said that if the properties are purchased before 2001, the indexation benefit still persists. Is it?
So the idea is that indexation benefit, so that 100 rupees of 2001 is equivalent to say whatever amount of whichever year you sold that property in. Okay. Now, what if the property was purchased before that? So
Yeah,
for
right.
them, indexation benefit will be there. Yes.
Okay. And then the base year would be taken as 2001 only?
So base year is taken as 2001. So in that case, what happens is, say if you purchase a property in 1990s, and then indexation cycle started from 2001. Okay. So
Right.
what you have to do is you have to get the property's valuation done from a registered valuer as of 1st of April 2001. So what was the worth of that property as on 1st of April 2001?
Okay.
And then use that as a base and then apply indexation.
Okay, sir. Sir, also I had one more question. Like there was a point which is not mentioned in this slide, but the government has also proposed to withdraw the equalization levy of 2% on the e-commerce operators. So how is it going to affect the international taxes that they receive?
No, actually, I'm not very familiar with this particular point.
Okay, sir, no problem.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Then Aditya.
Yes, sir. Okay. So, sir, my question is, what according to you should have been the budget? Because, sir, as we have seen the downfall of the BJP's government, so what according to you should have been the points or things which should have been included in this year's budget, but are not included or not mentioned?
So in my opinion, definitely, see from political point of view also, because this middle class is one of the biggest constituencies of BJP. They have supported BJP for definitely last 10 years and even prior to that. And if middle class haven't got much from the budget, then discontent will rise. Yeah, so definitely there should have been more tax concessions or tax cuts. That is one point. And then that big boost to infrastructure, that is good. And there should have been some specific mention of that.
Okay.
And then otherwise also there was no, that also reminds me one thing. See, the word railways was used only once.
Hmm.
When the finance minister talked about some proposals related to Andhra Pradesh. That's it. Otherwise, there was no mention of railways. And there was a time when even the word fiscal deficit was mentioned in just passing. Not in this year's budget, but I think in 2020. Okay. So other than that, nothing path-breaking as such. So that would, say, infrastructure and all, that is fine. And that has been going on for last 5, 6, 7 years.
Five,
So
six,
nothing
7
is
years.
new in that. So what I was
Mhm.
looking for is something similar to maybe what Yashwant Sinha did in 1999, a
1999,
privatization of
yes.
insurance. Or
Uh-huh.
Arun Jaitley did in, say, by bringing in IBC. Something of that sort. So nothing of that sort is there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Sure. So one question is coming in is a cut down budget for IIMs. So will there be hike in fees for IIMs? Yes, possibly yes. And another way to look at it is that IIMs also want autonomy. So they want to minimize government control and government interference. So this happened in the past as well, sometime in 2008 and all 2008-9. So when IIM Ahmedabad wanted say more autonomy, and then government was not willing, so they cut down the allocation, and because of which the fees increase. So that might happen. Okay, so do you find vision? Actually, no, I don't find. See, other than infrastructure development, there is nothing specific in that. So the question related to that angel tax has been provision to related to angel tax. So the idea is that in the startups, if say new investors want to invest in, so there are some angel investors, something similar to those venture capitalists and those private equity players. Yeah, so angel investors. So the tax has been removed on those angel investors, angel tax. So in a way, that is a good thing, because ultimately we want to have startup culture in this country. So yes, that is one good step, definitely. Is there any emphasis on education? Specifically in the budget speech, there is no mention of education as such. In the sense, there was a time when earlier finance minister used to say that we are going to open, say, new IIMs or new IITs or new AIMS at different places, something like this. It is not there in this year's budget. But there was mention of ITIs upgradation and then aligning the syllabus of ITIs with the needs of the industry and things like that. To that extent, there is a mention of education. Okay. Siddhant?
Sir, actually, I wanted to understand like what factors of a budget affect the GDP of a country. Like I had read an article that this budget won't affect it that much. So I wanted to understand how could it be different?
See, from government point of view, what can government do is in a country like India, just go on building infrastructure. And then the way it works is if more, say, roads are getting built, then there is demand in, say, cement industry, and then a lot of jobs are created. And then people who get employment in those sectors are more likely to buy cars and then go out in malls for shopping and things like that. So in a way, that has a multiplier effect. So that's all government can do, because otherwise government is just one of the players, like any other player in the economy, but a big player. Okay. So well, what probably that article meant is that the GDP will not be boosted as much. So whatever growth of GDP is happening, it will continue, because this is 11,000 crores is not a small amount. It is the highest ever allocation for the infrastructure.
Yeah, so it said that the GDP growth is already on a very good path and it will just continue
So
to.
beyond that, it can't grow. So probably that is what it means. See, and
So
there's another way to look at it is there is always a limit as to how much you can grow, in any given year. Because it's like you can't run a marathon every day, right? So it's something like that.
okay, sir. And like only infrastructure is a factor which can help in increase GDP.
So infrastructure and also the skilling in the long run. So if there are the population is better educated, there's better skill sets, then that can add to GDP. But that effect will not be felt immediately. It will be over the long run.
Okay, sir. Got it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Dakshita?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So I just wanted to know if there is anything mentioned about development of the art or culture sector, education or employment wise.
So they talked about tourism specifically.
Okay.
So
nothing about anything that that comes under the art sector, all the creative industry jobs or
No, nothing specific, at least there's no mention in the budget speech. So the way it works is the government allocates certain amount to different ministries. Okay. And then later on with that amount, that ministry decides how much it wants to spend and or how it wants to spend. So we'll have to go to those specific proposals in that ministry, and those proposals may not be available right now. So in the days to come, different ministries will come up with their own proposals and then decide how they want to spend money.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Sir, another question, not really related to the budget, but will the PPT be shared with us?
PPT, I'll just ask the concerned persons in IMS. So personally, I don't have any problem, but it also depends on organization's rules.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Sure. Yeah, you're welcome. So I think we can call it a day. So thank you very much and all the very best for CAT 24. And after CAT exam is over, I want to see you all in the GDPI because I will conduct a number of sessions on GDPI, similar session on budget 25, and also some sessions on economics and finance. And I'm also planning to conduct one session on US presidential elections just 2 days before the election. So US will go to polls on 1st Tuesday of November. So just 2 days before that, that is on that Sunday, I'm planning to conduct one session on US presidential elections. Okay, so see you all. Okay, thank you very much.